You won't believe what this cleaning lady went through until you find out who she really is. It was just past 10 p.m. when an older woman in a plain grey uniform pushed her cleaning cart into the marble-floored lobby of Williams Innovations. No one looked up, no one smiled, no one greeted her. She might as well have been invisible. The overnight janitor team was expected to blend into the shadows, clean up messes, and stay silent. That's what people assumed she was here to do. What no one knew, what no one could have imagined, was that this quiet woman, known to them as Janet, was actually Mary Williams. The Mary Williams, the legendary founder of the very company whose halls she was now silently scrubbing. 35 years ago, Mary had nothing. No family fortune, no powerful connections, just a dream. As a young black woman in the fiercely competitive world of finance and technology, she'd been doubted, dismissed, and overlooked at every turn. But she had grit. She poured her soul into building something that would stand the test of time. A company not just known for innovation, but for integrity, equality, and respect. A place where no one, from the janitor to the executive, would ever feel small. Now, decades later, Mary had stepped down, handing the company over to her Harvard-educated son, Robert, a man she believed would protect her values and carry her legacy forward. But whispers had started. Former employees reaching out, quiet complaints from old allies, rumors of toxic leadership, dehumanizing treatment of staff, and a culture that had soured from the inside out. Mary didn't want to believe it. She needed to see it, so she disguised herself as a cleaner, and on that cold night, no one recognized her. Not the young receptionist who scrolled through her phone without even acknowledging her presence. Not the new security guard who barked orders at her like she was beneath him. Not even the senior managers who had once applauded her name in the company's founding story. She was just a ghost in a uniform now. Her plan was simple: observe, listen, blend in. But what she would experience on that very first night would change everything. Her cart squeaked as she rolled it down the long, echoing hallway toward the elevators. She noticed how dim the lights were now, how cold and quiet the office felt. Not like the vibrant, buzzing energy it once had. She passed framed photos of past milestones, product launches, awards, charity work, all moments she had lived through. Now they felt distant, almost unreal, like a forgotten story someone else had written. As she reached the 40th floor, where executive offices lined the corridor like a row of locked safes, she stopped to start mopping, and that's when she met Gerald Hayes. He walked toward her like he owned the building, tall, polished, expensive shoes clicking on the tile, slicked back hair, perfect tie. His eyes scanned her as if she were a smudge on the glass. Without greeting, without even asking her name, he barked, "You missed a spot." She looked down. The floor had already been cleaned twice. Still, she nodded politely. Gerald leaned in. "You must be new. Let me explain something very clearly. We don't pay for slow, sloppy work. You don't leave until this floor shines. Got it?" His voice had the sharpness of someone who enjoyed breaking people down. Mary, heart pounding but voice steady, replied, "Yes, sir, I understand." He didn't respond, just walked away, intentionally dragging muddy footprints across the area she had just mopped. She stood frozen for a moment, not out of fear, out of disbelief. This was the same company where once managers had thanked janitors by name, brought them coffee during late shifts, made them feel like part of a family. She had made sure of that. Now she was watching that culture shatter, one cruel word, one dismissive gesture at a time. But she wasn't done yet. As she turned to mop the muddy floor again, she heard footsteps returning. Gerald was back, in his hand a half-full cup of water, and before she could say a word, he threw it. The ice-cold splash hit her like a slap. Water streamed down her hair, soaked her collar, dripped onto her shoes. The shock of it made her flinch, but it was the humiliation, the sheer, intentional cruelty that stunned her most. Gerald smirked. "Now that's something worth cleaning, or should I call someone more competent?" She stared at him, soaked but silent, and in that moment, Gerald didn't just see a janitor standing in front of him. He saw a woman who didn't flinch, who didn't crumble, who looked him in the eye. What he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that he had just made the worst mistake of his career. Mary cleaned in silence, every movement slow, deliberate, steady. Not out of weakness, but because she was watching, studying, calculating. If this was what he did to someone he thought was powerless, what else was happening behind closed doors? How deep did this rot go? And as she wrung out her mop and started over for the third time, she wasn't just cleaning the floor. She was preparing for war. The days that followed moved slowly for Mary, but every hour on the night shift revealed something uglier than the last. What she witnessed wasn't isolated cruelty. It was systematic, casual, and deeply rooted. It wasn't just Gerald. He was merely the loudest, the most obvious. But there was another player in this twisted game of power, Derek Phillips. Derek was the company's golden boy, young, sharp, charismatic, the kind of manager who graced glossy company newsletters and LinkedIn posts with polished sound bites and expensive suits. He was always talking about performance, excellence, market domination. But behind that veneer of charm was someone who wielded power like a blade, cutting down those beneath him with quiet precision. Mary's first real interaction with Derek happened late one Tuesday night. She had just finished cleaning the marketing department's main meeting room. The room gleamed, not a speck of dust, not a fingerprint on the glass table, not a chair out of place. It was spotless. She stepped back to admire the symmetry she had created, her way of bringing order to chaos. But as she turned to leave, the door creaked open. Derek walked in, glanced around the room, then gave a slow, exaggerated sigh. "This is what passes for clean now," he muttered, loud enough for her to hear. Mary turned, composed. "Sir, I followed the checklist." He walked past her, ignoring her words. With calculated movements, he knocked 2 chairs askew, grabbed a stack of papers, and let them fall dramatically to the floor. "I suggest you do it again, properly this time." She nodded, bent down, and began tidying the mess. But as she worked, she could feel his eyes on her, watching. Not because he cared about the room, but because he enjoyed the control. After she finished, she moved toward the door again, only for Derek to re-enter, now holding a large cup of coffee. He walked past her, set the cup down on the pristine table, then nudged it deliberately until the contents spilled across the surface. "Oh no," he said, feigning concern. "Accidents happen. You better take care of that." Mary returned to the cart, grabbed a clean rag, and wiped the table again. She didn't speak. She didn't react. But inside, something cracked. She wasn't just seeing individual cruelty, she was seeing a culture of it, a system that rewarded men like Derek for stomping on those who couldn't fight back. The next night, Derek demanded that she clean his personal office while he was still working. She entered quietly, hoping to be quick, but the moment she stepped in, he leaned back in his leather chair, clasped his hands, and just watched. Silent, eyes fixed on her every movement. She could feel it, every sweep of her cloth, every clink of the bin. His gaze followed her like a predator toying with prey. Then, finally, he spoke. "You know," he said coldly, "it amazes me how people like you still get hired. You think we need old janitors here? We could automate all of this." Mary didn't reply. She didn't trust herself to. If she did, the fury would spill out, and the whole plan would crumble. She just lowered her head and kept cleaning, knowing full well that every insult, every act of calculated humiliation would eventually be used against him. But it wasn't just the words, it was the way no one around him objected. Other managers passed by, saw the messes he made, the disrespect in his tone, and they said nothing, because speaking up in that place had become a liability. Silence had become survival. One evening, as she was collecting trash outside Derek's office, she saw him stop another janitor, a timid young man named Luis, and point to a small scuff on the wall. "Do you even have eyes?" Derek hissed. "That mark's been there for 2 days. What do we even pay you people for?" Mary watched as Luis mumbled an apology and rushed to clean it, his hands shaking. The power games weren't limited to Mary. This was how Derek operated, making people small just to make himself feel bigger. Mary knew now what she had suspected from the start. These weren't isolated incidents. They were symptoms of something much deeper. The soul of her company was rotting from the inside. But she needed more. She needed undeniable proof, not just of abuse, but of betrayal. It came late one Thursday. That night, Mary had been assigned to clean the executive lounge area on the 42nd floor. Most nights it was empty after hours. But as she turned a corner, she heard voices, soft, hurried, serious. Something about the tone made her freeze. She pressed herself quietly against the wall, just close enough to catch the words without being seen. "I'm telling you, we need to move faster," Gerald's voice said, low and urgent. "Robert's asking too many questions." "Relax," Veronica's voice followed. "He's naive. He still thinks this company runs on idealism and happy slogans." Mary's breath caught. Veronica Wells, Vice President of Business. Ruthless, brilliant. One of the few people Mary had once trusted with expansion strategy. She hadn't expected to hear her voice among conspirators. A third voice jumped in, Derek. "We just need to hold out a little longer, shift the budget quietly, make Robert look incompetent. Once the board sees the numbers, they'll have no choice but to replace him." Mary's heart thundered in her chest. She moved even closer, careful not to make a sound. She recognized the fourth voice. Cold, controlled. Karen Mitchell, the head of HR. "I've got the files prepared. If we present it the right way, Robert will look like a liability to the board. When he's out, we'll restructure. Gerald takes the lead, we secure our positions, and the company moves in a direction that actually makes money." They laughed like it was just another clever business move, not a betrayal. Not a backstabbing of the very man she had raised and prepared to lead. Not the destruction of everything this company was meant to stand for. Mary stepped back slowly, heart pounding, eyes wide. This wasn't just about bad behavior, or disrespect, or mistreatment of staff. This was a coup. The next morning, she didn't sleep. She reviewed everything she'd recorded. She had planted a small audio recorder in her cart, just in case something happened that night, and it had caught every word, every single word. This wasn't just about Gerald, or Derek, or even Karen and Veronica. This was about a conspiracy to hijack the company, to twist it into something unrecognizable. And now she had what she needed to fight back. You wake up in the morning more exhausted than when you went to sleep. Your body feels like it's been dragged through something heavy, your mind is foggy, and your spirit feels worn. You slept, or at least your eyes were closed, but you didn't rest. And if this has been happening to you night after night, it's not just physical fatigue, it's not just stress. It's a sign that something is happening behind the scenes, something spiritual. For the chosen ones, sleep isn't always a break. It's not just a time to recharge the body. It's often a time when spiritual activity increases, when the veil between worlds thins and unseen battles take place. You may think you were sleeping peacefully, but your spirit was awake, active, and involved. And if you've ever woken up feeling like you've been fighting something you couldn't see, it's because, on some level, you were. There is a war that doesn't begin when the sun rises. It begins when you close your eyes. The enemy doesn't wait for daylight. He knows that rest is sacred. Rest is recovery. Rest is where God speaks, heals, and reveals. If your rest is stolen, your clarity weakens. If your clarity weakens, your discernment fades. And when your discernment fades, your direction becomes foggy. This is how the enemy works, not always in explosions and chaos, but in slow, quiet exhaustion. The chosen ones often find their nights disturbed in cycles. Just when you think you're getting back into a rhythm, something comes to interrupt it. Restlessness, strange dreams, heavy emotions that don't match anything you've been thinking about. The timing of it all is too precise to be random, and that's because it isn't. You're advancing spiritually, you're growing, you're beginning to walk in more awareness, and the moment you start stepping into purpose, the resistance increases. Because tired people don't pray with power, exhausted minds don't hear clearly, worn-down spirits don't speak with confidence. So your sleep becomes the new battleground, not with loud attacks, but with interruptions, with emotional heaviness, with dream sequences meant to keep you unsettled. And let's not forget the power of subtle thoughts. Waking up in the middle of the night with intrusive ideas, self-doubt, fear, anxiety about things that haven't even happened. You lay there, trying to fall back asleep, but something's buzzing in your spirit, something is stirring that doesn't belong. This is where discernment is key, because not every thought is your own, not every feeling came from you. Some were planted, some were designed to keep your soul uneasy, so you can't rest, so you stay spiritually vulnerable. But here's the truth the enemy doesn't want you to remember. You still have authority, even in your sleep, even when you're unaware. You are not defenseless, you are not unprotected, but you have to take back that ground with intention. This means preparing yourself before you sleep, just like you would before going into battle, speaking peace over your mind, asking God to shield your dreams, declaring your bedroom as a place where only divine presence can dwell. These aren't just rituals, they are spiritual acts of warfare, and for the chosen ones they are necessary. Your rest matters, because when the chosen ones rest in peace, they wake up in power. That's why it's attacked, but that's also why it must be protected. And then there are the dreams, the kind that don't just disturb your night, but echo into your morning. Nightmares, visions, strange repeating scenarios. You wake up feeling like you saw something you weren't supposed to see. Or maybe you felt something you couldn't explain, and the weight of it sticks with you all day, like a shadow following you even in the light. That's not random. That's not just a bad dream. That is spiritual activity, either a message being delivered or an attack being launched. For the chosen ones, dreams aren't just a collection of random thoughts. They are often a language, a channel, a battlefield. God uses dreams to speak, to reveal, to correct, to guide. But the enemy also knows how to invade the dream realm. That's where confusion is planted, fear is injected, spiritual confidence is shaken. Because if the enemy can get you while you're sleeping, when your defenses are down, he can influence your waking life too. If you're not careful, you'll carry the fear of a dream into your relationships, your decisions, your purpose. And suddenly you start doubting things that were never a problem before. This is how the enemy plays the long game. A disturbing dream here, a false vision there, a whisper of fear in the middle of the night. It's subtle, but it's effective, if you don't recognize it for what it is. On the other side, there are dreams that come as warnings. You may see a friend in trouble. You may see an accident before it happens. You may sense that someone is lying to you, or that something is coming. These dreams often come with urgency, not terror, with revelation, not panic. The problem is, if you've been under constant spiritual attack, it becomes hard to tell the difference between a message and a trap. That's why discernment matters so much. When you wake from a heavy dream, ask immediately, did this bring fear or faith, confusion or clarity? Was this a warning or a weapon? Don't just move on and forget it. Write it down, reflect, pray, ask for interpretation. There are messages hidden in dreams that can't be delivered any other way, and chosen ones are often the first to receive them. But remember, you don't have to accept every dream as truth. Not everything you see in the night is meant to stay with you. Some things must be confronted, rejected, released. If you dream something that doesn't align with God's character, God's peace, or your divine purpose, you have the authority to reject it. Declare that it has no place in your spirit. Break the influence of fear. Cover your sleep with divine peace before the next night comes. Your dream life is not just a side effect of sleep. It's a sacred space, a place where the spirit world becomes visible. And if you're chosen, you have access to clarity that others miss, but you also become a target for confusion. That's why protection, discernment, and faith must go hand in hand. You were never meant to be tormented by your rest. You were meant to be restored by it. Don't let darkness claim what was meant to be divine. Guard your dreams, guard your sleep, and walk with the awareness that even in the night, you are never alone, and you are never powerless. There are moments in the middle of the night when you suddenly wake up, not because of a noise, not because of a dream, but because something within you stirs, an inner pull that you can't explain. It might be a quiet urgency, a name flashing across your mind, a heaviness in your chest that doesn't feel like fear, but feels important. You look at the clock. It's 3:11 a.m. You roll over, try to ignore it. But your spirit is unsettled. That's not insomnia. That's not your body being off rhythm. That is a spiritual call. And for the chosen ones, it happens often. You weren't just woken up. You were awakened. Chosen ones carry something different. Their role isn't just to navigate the world with discernment, it's to stand in the spiritual gap, often on behalf of others. Sometimes you're woken up not because of your own battle, but because of someone else's. Someone who isn't spiritually aware, someone who is too weak to pray, someone whose life is being threatened in the unseen realm. And so, God stirs you. He trusts you, not to fix everything, but to stand, to intercede, to be a voice in the dark for someone else who doesn't even know they're in danger. That's the weight of being chosen. You're not always being called for your own sake. Your spirit is being activated as a shield, a warrior, a messenger. You may not know what to say, but suddenly the urge to pray becomes overwhelming. And in that moment, it's not about eloquence, it's about obedience. Even one word spoken in alignment with divine purpose can stop something devastating from happening. You don't always get the details. You may never know the outcome. But in the spirit realm, your voice carries more power than you realize. You're not just praying into the dark. You're activating protection, releasing breakthrough, pushing back forces you can't see with your eyes but can feel in your soul. There are moments when you're the difference between chaos and peace, between loss and preservation, simply because you got up and responded to the call. That's what intercession looks like. It's quiet, it's lonely, but it's powerful, and it changes things, even if you never see it. And over time, you begin to recognize the patterns. It always happens around the same time, the same pressure, the same silence, the same urgency. You begin to realize this is not random. This is spiritual responsibility. This is a calling that doesn't clock out when you sleep. And instead of resisting it, you start to prepare for it. You learn how to respond quickly, how to discern if the pull is personal or prophetic. You become sensitive to the difference between anxiety and activation. But none of this works if your environment isn't prepared. If your space is spiritually noisy, if your atmosphere is full of distractions, your sensitivity becomes dull. That's why the environment where you sleep is more important than people realize. Your bedroom isn't just a place to rest, it's a sanctuary, a spiritual stronghold. And if you're chosen, you cannot afford to make it a place of chaos. What you surround yourself with before you sleep matters. The words you speak, the content you consume, the emotions you carry into the night, all of it either opens the door to divine rest or leaves cracks for interference. That's why chosen ones must be intentional about creating a space that is hostile to darkness and welcoming to light. Start with the atmosphere. Is your room filled with peace or cluttered with leftover tension from the day? Do you go to sleep angry, anxious, distracted, or numb? These aren't small things. They create spiritual entry points. Before you close your eyes, speak authority over your space. Declare peace out loud. Rebuke anything that tries to linger from the day. Invite divine presence in. Ask for protection not only over your physical body, but over your mind, emotions, and spiritual realm. Your bed is not just furniture, it's an altar, a place where encounters happen, where dreams form, where spiritual battles are won or lost before they even start. Make it a sacred space. Play worship softly. Speak scripture into the room. Cleanse it regularly, not just physically, but spiritually. Remove anything that doesn't bring peace, objects that carry strange energy, gifts that make you uneasy, even old memories tied to trauma or spiritual confusion. Everything you allow into your space carries a frequency. Choose carefully, and it's not just about what's in the room, it's about who you are before you lie down. Are you carrying bitterness? Are you carrying fear? Are you carrying burdens that don't belong to you? Take time to release them. Don't just scroll until you pass out. Pause, reflect, let go. Ask for clarity, ask for covering. The way you end your day determines how your night unfolds. And once you begin protecting your rest this way, you'll feel the shift. Nightmares lose their grip. Intrusive thoughts quiet down. Sudden wake-ups come with clarity instead of confusion. You won't just wake up tired and disoriented anymore. You'll wake up with purpose. With understanding, you'll know when to rise and pray, when to stay still and listen, when to speak and when to rest. That's what spiritual alignment looks like. It doesn't always mean peaceful nights, but it does mean protected ones. This is the truth that many overlook. Your sleep is a weapon, and the enemy knows that if he can disturb it, he can disturb everything else. But when you guard it, when you prepare your atmosphere and align your heart, your sleep becomes a place of divine encounter, of restoration, of strategy. It becomes a sacred meeting place between you and the unseen. The chosen ones are never off duty, not even in the silence of the night. But with protection, intention, and spiritual sensitivity, rest becomes more than recovery. It becomes revelation. It becomes power. And no force of darkness can remain where light has been claimed. You don't just survive the night. You take authority over it.